Hi, I'm Woney, and I'm a VTuber, and I'm giving myself an award for the world's most complex and confusing VTuber lore. VTubing is a varied and interesting genre of content creation, with all kinds of creative and interesting people doing all kinds of creative and interesting things, except delving into their lore. A VTuber's lore is supposed to explain why the anime character on your screen is who they are. Oh, you're a genetically modified tiger monster girl who's obsessed with mangoes? Why? I want to know exactly how you got here, how much you can bend, and where the hell are your pants? With so many different VTubers of different backgrounds, designs, and even species of animals and creatures ranging from something as mundane as a dog to mythical creatures and talking pumpkins, there's something so interesting about all the different concepts out there that can lead themselves to different kinds of stories, but rarely do we ever get to see them. This aspect of VTubing is one of the most interesting to me, and is what I decided that I would make my entire niche. I am the VTuber with the world's most complex and confusing lore, because for the past 2 years, I've been VTubing and telling a story in and out of my streams, ranging from audio scripts, little videos, short stories, a video game, and soon to be a short webcomic with my friend Little Dismay. Needless to say, there is a lot of stuff to catch up on if you want to be up to date with exactly what's going on. And I've been meaning to make this video for a while. So what better time than my 2-year anniversary? This video is going to chronicle my journey as a VTuber, not through Twitch clips, but through my writing. I'm not sure there's a lot of VTubers that can do that, which makes me extremely unique. So strap in, and without further ado, here it is, the official Woney lore compendium. For this video, I'm going to go down a timeline of the most important pieces of my story in order. I don't want to spend too much time explaining every detail and hidden meaning because, well, not only will we be here all day, I think it's more fun and interesting if I simply just lay it out for you guys. I presented this story as a mystery at first, drip feeding bits of information one at a time, so if things get confusing, just have faith that eventually it will all tie together. Now, pinpointing exactly where to begin all of this can be kinda tricky. One could say that the story began the instant I began streaming, since you can infer some things about me from the way that I look and choose to dress. I didn't exactly give anyone anything to go off of either. All chat knew is that I dressed like a cat and I liked mangoes. I played my lore very close to the chest when I began. However, I think the story really begins with my very first model reveal teaser. It's your standard reveal post, only instead of bright, peppy new disco or kawaii future bass, you get a song known as Last Night in My Dreams by Karen Jones playing on an old record player, with haunted text glitching in and out of the screen with some interesting messages. While at this point I didn't exactly reveal my lore outright, the implications are quite clear. Something was talking to Woney, taunting him, and really wanted him back. This is something that I think leads very nicely into the quote-unquote cursed arc, which began when my best friend and I, Sweet Honey Bear, made a bet.
If I lose this fucking game of Fortnite, I will go public on Twitter and say that I am a cat.
And I lost. Unfortunately, part of the bet was that I had to admit to everyone on Twitter that I am in fact a cat, which I did. But this happened.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So just to recap, I, Woney Von Wonnington, am a liar, 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 filthy liar. Congratulations, darling. You finally admitted your true nature. I'm so proud of you, kitten. You are one step closer to realizing your rightful place in the world. By my side, forever.
This was the very first teaser for Curse of Woney I had ever put out, and began a 6-month period where my streams were cursed. Strange, cryptic messages would begin to play during my stream, specifically one named "The password is candy corn." Now also over the course of this 6-month stretch, I began dropping more teasers for my upcoming game, Curse of Woney, which included some audio scripts that set up the basis of my lore. Woney is a person who used to be a cat. He was a familiar to a witch whose name was unknown at the time. For months, the witch would taunt Woney, telling him to come home, calling him such demeaning and belittling words such as kitten, and offered to take care of him. In January, I released the first official teaser for Curse of Woney, which continues to reinforce the idea that the witch that once owned Woney desperately wanted him back.
You must be so tired, kitten. Close your eyes, and I'll make sure nothing ever hurts us again.
But something else began to rear its ugly head. After the teaser for Curse of Woney, I wrote a short nursery rhyme known as Beware of the Cat Sith, which tells you to do exactly that, beware of the cat Sith, and the best way of warding him off was to give him a mango or two. Around March, a second voice could be heard taunting and laughing at Woney on my streams. There was also a monologue that was a hidden channel redeem that you could have found that my friend Pip actually did. The monologue is from the perspective of an unknown speaker who talks about how mangoes from stores aren't typically as good as the mangoes that you can steal from other people, as they're usually bigger, juicier, and messier. In April, the first short story titled Woney in the Terrible No Good Very Bad Day was posted in my old Discord server. It spun a tale of someone stating that they had a wonderful day as they escaped from a closet. They then lured a man away from a place with flashing lights who would beg for his life and stated that Woney was not its name. The person speaking says that it enjoyed the taste of mangoes and the sound of a dead body slapping on concrete. The story ends with the unknown speaker stating that Woney had a terrible day, but that the speaker would kill to relive it over and over again. Finally, this is all tied together during my very first anniversary, where this little video plays.
Do your friends know? Do your friends know what you are, what you really are? Have you told them that hidden underneath the smile, the laughter, it's lies, all of it? But one of these days I will free myself, and I will kill them. We will kill them.
In July, a second short story titled Playing with Their Food was dropped, which details someone, presumably Woney, telling the story of how they would watch somebody or something and gorge themselves as the blood drips off of their own face. He then goes on to say that this other person or thing would sometimes give them control as their victim begins to scream and beg, and that the speaker, Woney, would recognize himself less and less. Now, the well for lore dries up until about October, when I finally released my lore game Curse of Woney, which is really dense. I'm going to try my best to explain everything as concise as I possibly can and skip over the flowery details, but I highly recommend that you go and play it yourself. Well, because it took me a year to make, and it really means a lot to me. Please go play my game, it's free. So there's a lot to uncover. First things first, Curse of Woney reveals that Woney was indeed a human child before his time as a witch's familiar. You see, Woney had his mind swapped into the cat's body, where he then had his memory wiped and then his body cursed, so that every time he would die, his mind was then sent back in time to the moment that the curse was placed back on him. But why? Well, the witch who placed the curse on Woney, whose name was revealed to be Marlene, thought that Woney was actually a demon known as Sith, who had some very important information that a coven of witches known as the Arcani wanted. However, knowing that he'd be captured, Sith wiped his own memory of the information so that he couldn't tell them what he learned. Only the thing about the spell that Sith casted on himself to remove his memories didn't actually destroy the memories, it only obstructed them, which means that there are ways of reintroducing those memories back into a person's subconscious, and one of the best ways to do this is something called temporal trauma, which is a common side effect of excessive use of time traveling. The original plan was to wipe Sith of all of his memories and then force him to serve as Marlene's familiar until death, where the process would repeat over and over and over again until Sith's mind would snap and his memories would return back to him, causing him to remember and tell Marlene everything as a form of cruel and unusual punishment. However, as previously stated, Sith swapped minds with Woney, who was only a child at the time, which means that this was happening to an unsuspecting young child instead. Woney would live and die over and over and over again, slowly losing his mind over the course of multiple 100-year lifetimes. And to make things worse, Marlene would also begin suffering from similar effects of temporal trauma. She quickly figured out that the person that she was training as her familiar wasn't actually Sith. But every time she went back in time, she slowly became more and more possessive of her familiar, forgetting her original goal in the first place and subsequently forgetting that Woney was somebody else entirely. In order to keep Woney from regaining his memories every time he died, Marlene would begin to give Woney mind-altering potions, wiping his memory again and again on top of all the time-traveling shenanigans. effectively turning Woney's mind into a blender, where he'd begin recalling things from past lives, forgetting where and when he was very often, and seeing strange things such as a different version of himself with glowing white eyes. After about 8 or 9 of these time loops, Woney finally manages to escape with the help of a talking pumpkin named Peppo. Woney and Peppo accidentally got stuck together when Woney stuck his head into a portal while holding the pumpkin in his mouth, which is why I have this pumpkin-shaped tattoo on my face. That's not a tattoo, that's actually a living, thinking, breathing person who can't escape. He's stuck there forever and he's screaming eternally, poor guy. But despite that little hiccup, the two of them do finally make their escape, and Woney is returned back to his original body, which brings us to the actual plot of Curse of Woney. 30 years after his original escape attempt, Woney is lured out into the woods by a demon named Barbados. Woney passes out and wakes up in a strange familiar forest, back in his cat form, which causes him to have an intense panic attack. After regaining his composure, he finds another witch named Amelie who's looking for her familiar, a white cat named Trix. Amelie was tasked with finding somebody named the White Witch, who Woney correctly assumes is his former master Marlene. He tells Amelie that he's going to help her find her familiar as long as she can cast a time dilation spell that will allow him to spend more time in Marlene's lair so that he can find Trix. Only Woney doesn't tell Amelie that the reason that he's looking for Marlene is to kill her. It takes a lot of dying over and over and over again, but Woney does indeed find Trix as well as several other cats who Marlene used as magical experiments in an attempt to try and force Woney's memory onto them, effectively making her a replacement for Woney. However, all of these attempts failed, and she instead chose to abandon them, leaving them to freely wander around the manor. Combing through the details of the story, Woney does eventually find Marlene, who he confronts, but instead of facing Woney directly, she instead forces Woney to look into a mirror back at himself, and manages to convince him that he's selfish for having turned his back on her, despite all the lifetime she spent taking care of him and teaching him magic. She then casts a spell on Woney, making him relive a moment from a past life in hopes that he chooses a different path, a path where the two of them can stay together instead. It doesn't work, of course, causing Woney to shatter the mirror in front of him, revealing that the reflection in front of him wasn't actually a reflection at all, but instead a different cat, a black cat with silver eyes. The cat introduces itself as Sith. It tells Woney that he can help him defeat Marlene in exchange for momentarily sharing his body so that he can eat mangoes again. Before Woney can even object or agree, Sith forces himself into Woney's body, giving him the power to defeat Marlene once and for all, only it came at a steep cost. After being rejected by Woney again, it's revealed that Marlene had placed a failsafe within her lair that would cause it to self-destruct if Woney would deny her again, dooming Trix and the other 8 cats along with her. Naturally, Trix is pretty upset about dying, as she attempted to warn Woney of a strange feeling that she got while he continued his progress towards finding Marlene. Initially, Woney does feel guilty about getting the other cats' souls essentially wiped from existence, but after being yelled at by both Trix and Peppo, it's Sith who convinces Woney that none of this was his fault. He had no idea about the failsafe, and even if he did, it doesn't mean that he should be condemned to a life of being stuck as Marlene's pet, even if it comes at the cost of anybody else's soul. After a side quest to go collect some lost memories, Woney, Sith, and Peppo finally make it to Marlene's final doorstep. It's also a little bit before this where Sith's true intentions are finally revealed. When Sith talks about wanting to taste mangoes again for the first time in a long time, he fails to mention that when he says the word mango, he's actually talking about a ripe, bleeding, and juicy human soul. And now that he and Woney are sharing a body, Woney now shares the same hunger and desire for these quote-unquote mangoes. So when Woney does actually defeat Marlene and almost kills her, Sith convinces him that he needs to reap Marlene's soul, but instead of being able to do it, Woney feels guilty and has a change of heart, instead saving her during the middle of the soul siphoning process, which instead gets her trapped in Woney's head. Though baffled by this sudden change of heart, Sith remarks that ultimately this choice doesn't matter, because it's time for Woney to do what Woney does best, and die. Sith then finally tells Woney why he swapped minds with him in the first place, and that he picked Woney randomly so that he can live out the rest of his life in a human body. In an attempt to drive Woney to death, with a sick, twisted, and possibly neo-nihilistic worldview, Sith continues to remind Woney that because of Marlene, he has no family, loved ones, and anything to live for. Because he spent so much of his life as a pet to Marlene, Woney has nobody to remember him, no lifelong achievements to leave behind. He's left zero mark on the world. Despite the fact that he's lived for thousands of collective years, Woney's existence effectively means nothing.
All those nights spent wondering what you did wrong. Crying yourself to sleep wondering what you could have possibly done to deserve all this. And the answer is, not a damn thing. You were just unlucky.
And to make matters worse, if Woney would continue to live, it means his abuser and tormentor would be living rent-free in his head with him forever. But little did Sith know that saving Marlene's life would potentially be Sith's greatest downfall. Woney and Marlene have a brief moment inside of Woney's mind where she seems to have regained her sanity. She tells Woney of the original plan to try and trap Sith in the time loop. She now realizes that falling in love with her new familiar while suffering from temporal trauma led her to losing her sanity. Woney, ignoring her excuses, vents about his current predicament with Sith, to which Marlene tells Woney about the exit clause of the curse. The curse ends after the 9th death, and the subject will then die forever. However, Sith believes that Woney has died 9 times. Marlene believes that Woney has only died 8 times, calling both of their math into question. Woney decides that he's going to try and trick Sith into believing that he has 1 life left, effectively ruining all of Sith's plans, in theory. The truth of the matter is, Woney isn't actually sure how many times he's died, and his confrontation with Sith only instilled reasonable doubt within the both of them, leaving the two of them confused and stuck. If Woney has 1 life left, he can simply just die and put an end to Sith's plan, but if he doesn't have 1 life left, this next death will result in Sith getting exactly what he wants: total control of a new vessel. Unsure of how many lives Woney has, the two are forced to make a deal with the other. The deal is known as the Pact. The Pact is 4 rules long, and the strictness of how loose it needs to be followed depends completely on Sith's mood and how much pain and suffering he wants to cause Woney. But before making this deal, Woney has to deliver someone some unfortunate news. Amelie, the witch that Woney was working with to find Marlene in the first place, the witch he promised that he would find their familiar. The same familiar that he accidentally wiped from existence when he fled from Marlene. Now, in Curse of Woney, you have the choice to lie or tell the truth to Amelie, but I'll let you know that the real canon choice is to tell her the truth, that Trix's fate was truly out of your hands, which results in Amelie hating your guts, even though she understands that there wasn't anything that you can do. Marlene, who once again lives in Woney's head, tells Woney that the Arcanine Coven is now going to come for him, to which Woney laughs off. Now, finally free of anything to do with Marlene, except for the fact that she now lives in his head, Woney decides that he's going to go back to the planet that he was born on, even though he can essentially go to any dimension or planet that he wants to. Finally, the last thing that he has to do is make a pact with Sith. The 4 rules of the pact are as follows. Rule number 1, Woney must eat 1 mango a day. Rule number 2, the mango must be fresh. Rule number 3, Sith cannot hurt anyone Woney deems as a close friend or loved one. And rule number 4, every Halloween, Sith is allowed total control for 1 night, and rule number 3 becomes null and void. It's not a great deal in Woney's favor, with the only caveat being that sometimes Sith is really lenient with rule number 1, meaning that Woney can go days, weeks, or even months without killing anybody, but sometimes Woney finds himself completely at the mercy of Sith's hunger. Curse of Woney officially ends with Woney chasing down a random man and killing him, stealing his soul. But even after everything with Marlene being said and done, Woney is still left in a very interesting situation. He made a pact with a demon unsure of how many lives he has left until his curse runs out. There's a coven of witches that have declared him a traitor and will be coming after him, presumably hunting him down, and he's now a witch in the regular human world, with the ability to go to any plane of existence that he wants. With an almost infinite amount of magical power at his fingertips, Woney is not exactly sure with what he should do with it. The only thing that seems to be on his mind is surviving from day to day without hurting anybody that he doesn't have to. Even though he's not stuck in a time loop of dying over and over and over again, he is stuck in a loop of self-hatred. His abuser and tormentor got exactly what she wanted, the two of them stuck together for the foreseeable future. He dresses like a cat because when he wears anything else, he feels like he's tricking people into thinking that he's not a monster. And the very monster that he dresses up to look like feeds off of his misery in a twisted sense of entertainment. Essentially, Woney is the Faye version of Charlie Brown. He never gets a break. Even when he wins, he loses. With that, there are plenty of things that could happen to Woney in the future, and I have lots of plans. I'm already working on another game called Woney Goes to Hell, which features Woney going to hell. It'll be really fun. There are other characters within the story that have much more depth to them, such as Sith, Marlene, and other characters that I didn't even get a chance to mention, because I was really trying to hit the really important bits, as well as a lot of my friends who are also VTubers that have been slotted into my lore as relevant characters. It's been a pretty fun 2 years, and I'm only getting started. Thank you so much for watching. It means a lot that anybody would stick around this long, not just to the end of the video, but with me as a creator. Streaming to me is kind of only a means to get the character of Woney out there. The true authentic Woney experience is not by watching my Twitch streams. It's this, the story. That is what makes me, me. And I appreciate you seeing me. Enjoy the rest of your day, and take care. Bye.